Hey, Andrew, welcome to the show.
So glad to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us who you are and what does your agency do?
Great. Well, my name is Andrew Eklund. I'm the founder and CEO of Cicerone. We are a almost 30-year-old digital agency based here in Minneapolis. Started the agency at the dawn of the public internet, and have basically seen everything since. People said, "Well, what were you doing in your first days?" I was like, "I was getting people's first email addresses and first websites and all this." And what do we do today? We apply super advanced AI to audience segmentation and modeling. So you know everything in between. So I've been doing this a long time, and it's just a great business to be in. I love it.
I remember in 95, 95 was when I graduated high school. And I
Yep.
remember messing with Prodigy,
Yep.
and that was really kind of the web and just going through their interface. And then it became like you remember saving up all the AOL CDs? I
Oh
think I
yeah.
had like 20 hours to get on and
Yeah. Well, I started actually an online community on AOL in '93 and ran that for 2 years. And it's funny because I think back on that and like basically what the AOL community was Facebook. I mean, we had messaging and chat and document sharing, and it was like a mini Facebook, enough ahead of the internet that it was a real viable place to, we were an international association. So we had members from all over the world. That was the first time I really saw the world get small.
Yeah. What was your first client? And what'd you charge for it? And what'd you do for
Oh
it?
man. Well, it was probably my dad's consulting agency, I would imagine, right? He ran a consulting firm. That was one. Land O'Lakes food ingredients division, I think, was one of the first ones. And I also remember that because I was actually coding HTML for that one.
I used to love the HTML when it was tables
Yeah,
because
it
I
was fun
understood
to hang
that.
around and do it. Well, this is when you would had to write it in like Notepad or stuff like that, right? Like there was no editor, there's no HTML editor.
So was this when we had to do like change mode 755 to get permissions for images to show?
All that kind of stuff. Well, people would get pissed at us, like users would get pissed at us if we had images on the site because
Because it would go
Facebook
like,
couldn't handle it. Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. But part of the founding story of this place is actually interesting too, because in '96, I started a separate company called IndieSonic. And IndieSonic was one of the first independent music online portals where independent record labels and bands could actually, we built a CMS so they could go in and update their concert schedule. They could put new clips of their music. It was real. We were using real audio. I don't know if people probably don't even remember what that was, but it was like you could stream clips of stuff. And then you could after you listen to like a 30-second clip, you could buy the CD. Because let's remember, you could not download a CD. First of all, even if you did and it took you a week to do it, where would you put it? And we would ship them the CDs. But the reason I set up that company was that I couldn't convince people at the time that people would say, well, I would never put my credit card on the internet. That sounds like, a recipe for disaster. And I'm like, I guarantee people will do it. And so I set up an e-commerce business that operated for 10 years as a separate business. And it was an awesome business. It was a lot of fun. I have a music background. But for my real clients, my brand clients, I could point to this thing and say, I'm making money right now. E-commerce, streaming, all this kind of stuff. And they're like, oh, okay. So, we had to do that back in the day. It's just like start companies and start businesses just to prove to people that this is what people will do.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going back when I started doing websites, it was always kind of like a side gig for the first couple months, and then people started hitting me up, "Hey, you want to do this business?" Like we did a 1031 exchange business, and then we did a website called My Town before MySpace, and it was kind of like
Yeah.
that, and it was a lot of fun looking back because there's always opportunity, but there was a ton of opportunity for people to just hit it out of the park before really anybody even knew about it.
Correct. Correct. And, it took many, many years. I mean, because when we had the dot-com crash in 99, 2000, there was a significant number of people and brands who thought, well, great, now the internet went away. We don't have to deal with that bullshit anymore. We can get back to doing the things that we used to do. But that's when Google and Amazon and all the blue chip players, came out of the dust of that and became the Magnificent Seven. So, be careful for crashes because, AI is going to have a crash, but out of it will come the next three or two or three models that everybody uses. It always happens.
Yeah. How are you guys using AI and adapting to AI?
I basically said to my staff, well, November of 2022, when ChatGPT 3.5 came out, I said, we're all in on this. And I know that you don't know what in is. And I know you don't know what all is yet. But this is without a doubt in my mind, not just for marketing and advertising, but just work in general. This is where things are going to head. And so I really had to manage my own culture and my own staff to say, there are going to be things that you see when you log into Meta or Google or the Trade Desk or LiveRamp or wherever you go. And one day, just be prepared. You're going to wake up and there's going to be a button that says, automate my job. It won't actually say that, but that's what it'll do. And I want you to push the button. Because if you don't push the button, then all of our clients are going to push the button, right?
Yeah.
So we have to reimagine what our value is in the world. How do we use these tools now? And I'll get back to this specifically about how we're using it. But I think having a backdrop of just basically saying like, this is a genie out of the bottle, and when that happens, it goes through the classic hype cycles, right? It goes through the rapid adoption. We all know that, right? ChatGPT was the most rapidly adopted technology in human history. And then there's waning sort of interest. And then it sort of goes down and then it'll get back up again. And, there's a bubble in all of this. NVIDIA, people think NVIDIA is kind of a bubble. The chip makers are a bubble. All these different large language models, they haven't really differentiated themselves yet. What's the difference between Claude versus ChatGPT versus Gemini versus Grok versus Llama? So I use all of them. Literally, I have tabs up, all of them, and I do the same sort of prompting to try and get some benchmarks as to what's going on. So the way we're using it is not necessarily in the most obvious ways, right? Like the obvious ways are that it's going to create all the copy for our search ads, and we do that, and it's fine. It's not game changing to me.
It's actually pretty bad,
It's pretty
honestly.
bad. Yeah, exactly. So if I want ChatGPT to do hard work, I want it to do work that humans have a hard time doing. And so the main area that we use it is essentially in training, right? In data training, and to try and help our clients harvest all of the different data sets that they have access to that are sitting all over the different place, and to put it into a centralized hub. And so we started something called the Intelligence Hub, which is, to a large extent based on Snowflake as the base layer for data integrity. You've got the different AI models, and then you have all of the APIs that build into it, right? So it could be coming in from Salesforce, could be coming in from your media channels like a Google or a Meta or a Trade Desk. It could all of your research. And I think the areas that I get super excited about is all of the unstructured data that doesn't live anywhere. Right? Like, for example, when I'm working with sales organizations or B2B companies that have sales organizations, if you have 25 salespeople doing 10 calls a day, that's 250 calls of humans interacting about brands where the prospect is telling you everything they think about your brand and your product and what it's going to do for them, what it doesn't do for them, what their hopes, fears, and dreams are, pricing considerations, integrations, all the different things that they're expressing themselves that a salesperson is then what? Feverishly taking notes over here. When I'm talking to you, I'm not taking notes. I'm listening. I'm paying attention to you. I think the human level is super important. So what happens? All that intellectual capital evaporates every single day. So what we're doing is we're putting things like Fathom in place or other recording things. And then, most of these meetings are happening either over a voice over IP phone system, like a Ring Central, where you can record all the calls, or it's happening in Zoom or some other recording or a conferencing system, which now has recording. And so we're taking all of those recordings of all of those calls, getting them back into that central place, and then applying AI to it to start to look for nuances in conversations, which conversations are more successful than others so that you can use it for sales training. What's the language that the consumer is using? Maybe we should start using that language in our advertising so that we're using the language of the marketplace. all of that intelligence that evaporates, the best stuff evaporates. We're trying to capture all of it. Is it groundbreaking? I think so. To be able to capture all of your intellectual capital every day, that to me is
Um,
the most actionable, most human stuff that never shows up in data other than in these places.
so last week, because when ChatGPT came out, I was all fired up and I loved kind of doing the prompt engineering to figure out. And I felt like in the very beginning, it was really, really good. And then it's gotten really, really bad. Like last week, because I liked your take on this, on which platforms do you feel are the best as of right now? We had this one course that a bunch of people jumped into. And so we always asked what their biggest challenge was, why they jump in. So we had literally over 1,000 entries of that data. So I would take it, I would export it out into a spreadsheet, have 1,000 points of data of what their biggest challenges were. And I put it in ChatGPT. I said, here's a survey that I ran. I want you to look for what are the most common themes of what are the top 10 average challenges that agency owners are having. It
Mm,
just kept reporting like random ones. Like one person, the whole thing was like, oh, I struggle with COVID because we did this around COVID.
yeah.
And it had that as the top 10. I'm like,
Hmm.
I
Which
don't,
and you're using ChatGPT 4?
yeah, I was using the latest one. And
Did
because I'm like you, I'm like,
yeah,
put all our data into it
yeah,
and then start asking it questions. If you were a marketing superpower, how would you market this? Or just
yeah,
because I use it for ideas and that's what I've used it for, but I wanted to use it for more data crunching, right? For
yeah,
me to go through 1,000 lines of responses and try to, and especially for someone that hates a spreadsheet.
yeah, right, right. Well, so let me ask you a question. Did you tell ChatGPT that it failed?
No.
I talk to these models like they're humans, right?
Okay.
And so I'll tell it all the time, which is why, never take whatever it spits out as any sort of gospel truth. The other thing I always do is check sources. Like, more and more of them now have citations. So I'll take a look at their sources. And I think the other important thing is, well, and in terms of like which models are best, I refuse to standardize on anything for probably 2, 3 years. Like I have no, like right now, like I said, I have all my tabs open and they're all open. And I apply the models differently based upon what I need to do. So, for example, like if you're using Llama, I believe, and I'll be wrong about this, but like you can't attach a document to it. Whereas ChatGPT, you can, right? And Gemini is baked into a lot of the Google products. So you could basically tell Gemini, learn on this Google Drive folder. So like things like Gemini, I love it because it's already sort of integrated. You got that obviously with Microsoft and Copilot, but those two models aren't great, right? So the integrations are great, but the models aren't necessarily as competitive as something like a ChatGPT 4 or the new Llama 3.1.
What if people did this? And maybe you do this with Gemini. So I haven't even thought about it this way. So we have a CRM and we have forms and special custom fields in those CRMs to get the data that we're most excited about.
Yeah.
Would it make sense to export that information out into like a Google Sheet and then have Gemini go through all of that? Like, are you putting those documents in one particular folder and then saying, Gemini, read all the data in this particular folder?
Yeah, I would consider that sort of for like a small business, a smaller enterprise, medium-sized enterprise that's not going to be able to have like deep IT infrastructure and a data lake and all this kind of stuff. I do think that it's going to be one of those things where we're going to be frustrated. We're going to be frustrated because the best models that come out of this are may not have great integrations. And we're going to be frustrated that we have to use the ones that are integrated because it's in line. That doesn't mean that Gemini is not going to get better. It's going to get better. Obviously Microsoft owns, a significant portion of OpenAI, and Copilot is not OpenAI. It's their two,
Yep.
their components, right? But and all of that is like, again, we're probably days away from. I mean, the rapid ascent right now of AI is
Crazy.
it's just crazy. So what doesn't work today? That's what I do hear a lot of that. To be honest with you, I do hear a lot of people say, well, I tried that and it did, and it spit me back bad results. Okay, well, you were using Chat
Yesterday.
3.5 in April 2023, right?
Yeah.
So, you got to keep going back. The other thing too that's really important is that my prompts are really long. They might be paragraphs.
Are you looking for a strategic, reliable, white label partner to scale your agency business? E2M is the #1 white label partner for digital agencies when it comes to web design, web development, e-commerce, SEO, and content writing. Now, E2M is a trusted partner by over 150 agency partners, and they've been providing white label services to agencies for over a decade with a team of 170 plus experts. E2M is on a mission to help 500 plus agency owners increase their revenue and profit margins with impactful white label services. Check out their transparent and flexible white label pricing model at e2msolutions.com/smartagency. E2M is currently running a special discount for 10% off for the first 3 months, available for a limited time. So go check them out right now.
Break down some of your prompts, because I know that's one of the biggest things. And I'm glad that you said ChatGPT or whichever prompt or whatever response you get, be like, hey, that's not good. I don't like it. And here's why. And get very descriptive, kind of like a employee that you're training. Because everyone listening, my whole goal from this podcast and all the things that we do is to give everyone ideas, because there's so many agencies are being reactive to what's out there rather than proactive. And I feel if, like you were saying, like, especially when I have an agency owner in our mastermind and they're talking about, hey, I hired this salesperson, they didn't work out. And there's like, I went through some of their calls, but I don't have the time to go through all of them. Well, if we take kind of the model that you do for your clients, well, here's why, like, here's what it's kind of breaking down, and then listen to it a couple times and be like, is this valid right now?
Think about that model that I just talked to you about in terms of recording all the sales calls. So a prompt that I would want to do as a sales manager, right, or VP of sales or something else like that is, and again, and my prompt would be longer than this, but like, show me the best performing calls as measured by that it turned into a conversion inside Salesforce, right? So those are two different data points. You've got the recording of the call, and then that being registered in Salesforce and then turning into a conversion event or a lost opportunity or a next step or something else like that. Which of our calls from this month ended up with the ones that took the most time that ended up in not converting? And who are those people? So that we can avoid marketing to try and generate more activity from people who are going to be low yield. I mean, that is the dream that a VP of sales was. How do I optimize my salespeople's times on high value calls? And we know how this works in the real world. They get mad at marketing, right? They throw it over the transom. They say, these are, you call them MQLs, marketing qualified leads, to make your MBOs look good to your boss. I have something over here called an SQL, a sales qualified lead. Those are not the same things. And I don't think they should ever be anything other than one metric. Did it convert or didn't it? And we're all in this together. So I feel like the questions that you ask it is as though you had a sidekick. Like, I'm the VP of sales. I have this other thing over here that's you should think of it as an SVP of sales. It knows more than you do. You have to go in with the understanding that these models know more than you do.
I've even created prompts which would create more prompts.
Yep.
Like, what are the questions? I'm a VP of sales. What are the questions I should be asking in order for us to convert more? Help me create this prompt. And then it would ask me 4 questions.
Yep.
And then you kind of go through it.
Perplexity has done that, right? Perplexity has done that. I think of Perplexity as an AI-driven search engine. Actually, the goal of Perplexity from the founder was that he wanted to build what the original vision of Google was, which is interesting. And Perplexity has done that well because it sort of like a search engine will say, here's the answer. Here's some additional questions you might want to ask. And here are some other topics that are related to this that might be helpful to you. And to me, I love that, right? Like that's a 3-dimensional sort of intelligence layer of saying, I see where you're going with this, and I'm going to preempt you having to keep prompting me by showing you here's some other things that are going. And I think that that's, again, this is all just going to get better and better. But, going into it in a conversant way, I think is super important. Talk to it like a person. I do it all the time. I yell at it. That was you bombed on that. It knows what it means when I say you bombed.
Oh, I've told it many other things we can
Yeah.
probably not repeat on this. Are you looking at it? You mentioned kind of a lot of these AI tools will really kind of be for search engines again or whatever. How can we start looking at getting our businesses in these AI tools? So when people go to these AI tools, where's these AI tools pulling all their data or search engines?
So I'm not a data engineer. So my answers to these questions can end up being a little bit theoretical. But I will say that, let me give you sort of where history repeats itself. So we talked about 1995. In 1995, one of the reasons it was difficult for me to even start the agency and grow the agency was that brands would say, I don't want my information on the internet, because then all of my competitors will be able to see my information and I'll lose my competitive advantage. And I'll just tell you that I heard that for years, not just in 95. I probably heard it for 5 years, saying it's okay to put up a billboard on the information superhighway that doesn't say anything, but at least we get to have a URL, right? And it wasn't until people realized that SEO was the thing that was pulling in all and then they got angry because they can't find themselves on the internet. And I said, they can't find you on the internet because you have one image on your website because you wanted it to look pretty. And so if you want to be serious about this, we have to start creating content. AI models are really no different in many respects. So I think what will happen, it's not there yet. I think what will happen over the next 2 to 5 years is that as business people, consumers start to just replace, or if Google replaces itself with whatever its next generation is, or if one of these models replaces, we don't think of it as search anymore. You just think of it as this intelligent thing that you have with you all the time, that is the smartest thing on the planet, that you can ask it questions, and beyond just giving you a result, it gives you not just the answer, but a lot more context around that. And the only way to do that is as people make more and more decisions based on that, then brands will say, for example, I want to buy, let's just say I want to buy an electric vehicle. I'm a little bit pissed off at Elon right now. So I'd prefer to know what are my options outside of Tesla, because I'm not interested in driving around in a billboard for Elon. I'm pissed off, but at the same time, I don't want to buy a shitty EV either that has a bad battery, like what are my options and all this kind of stuff. Well, if you're Toyota or Volkswagen and you decided, you know what, we have to lock down all of our information so that AI can't access it and get trained on that information. Well, guess what? Now all of a sudden Toyota and Volkswagen is no longer indexed, if you will, or part of the training models. Now, that doesn't make any difference to some extent now, because YouTube, any consumer out there talking about their Volkswagen EV is also on the training models. But now the training models are based upon consumer feedback, not brand feedback.
Yeah.
But what happens if that car ain't so great? So I think we're in 95 all over again as it comes to AI. But I also do believe, and I'm very much a strong proponent of private AI platforms, right? So, for example, I do believe that there's a ton of information that sits within firewalls, or obviously within cloud infrastructure of brands, that should not be available to train models.
Yeah.
But you can take something like Llama, which is an open source model, download it, fits on a thumb drive, and apply it to your network. And you're going to see a ton of that. And the doors will start to open out to the public internet. But I think that that's what people don't understand that yet. We're not there yet.
Well, I love that we talked about kind of the things here and things are coming, but I always like to ask, what's something in the agency world that's not going to change in the next 5 years?
I think what will not change is that people desire to have less advertising, less intrusive advertising in their life. And as an agency, that's primary job is to put advertising in front of people. I actually love that. And let me just tell you why. I don't like advertising clutter as much as the next person, right? I don't like it to be everywhere. I don't like it to invade my space. What I do like is relevant advertising. So, for example, let's just take Instagram. If you polled people and said, do you hate advertising in Instagram? And they take a second to think about it versus like the gut reaction is, oh, I hate advertising everywhere. The answer is they don't hate advertising on Instagram because it delivers to you what you want. And now because of shoppable ads and all that kind of stuff, I guarantee you that your wardrobe or your shoe collection or whatever is full of stuff that you bought on Instagram.
Yeah.
And that's because they understand you and they know you and they're trying to deliver to you something of higher value. So my point being is that I think that the consumer will always continue to get advertising because advertising pays for the content that they get for free, right? And unless you're willing to pay for TikTok or you're willing to pay for Instagram or you're willing to pay for Facebook or all of these other ones or pay on a by search basis, nobody's going to do that, right? They like a free internet. They like getting their stuff for free. So the only way to break that down is that we have to start to value as advertisers individuals at a higher rate than some shitty CPM that we end up buying on remnant.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I like that.
So to me, the economics of advertising are going to change over the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years, even though I've been saying this for at least 10. But the value proposition for users has never been, we've never properly valued humans. And so if we want scarcity in advertising, give you less advertising, then we have to value you more. But if I'm a brand and I don't want to advertise to everybody on the planet, I really just want to go out hardcore outdoor mountain bikers, right? And I have a high-end $5,000 bike, right? Or a $10,000 bike. I don't need to advertise to people who are going to buy a Schwinn banana seat. I don't think they make those anymore. They should, by the way. Those are sweet.
I love those are the most comfortable seats. I had one of those bikes growing up, and the banana seat. Everyone, for all those younger people, not as old as we are, look at banana seats on a bike. The most comfortable seat ever.
Ever.
Your buddy's behind you too.
Yeah, it's for giving your buddies a buck.
Yeah,
That's what we called it. Give me a buck to school.
I never called it that, and I'd be
Didn't
careful
you?
about calling it that.
Oh, we called it a buck. Yeah, give me a buck on your bike. Anyways, go skitching on the ice behind people, hang on to people's bumpers.
The skitching.
Right on the
Yes. So funny story there. I remember we would have the younger kids stand at the stop signs and they would sing to distract the driver when we could get on the back of a car. This is when the cars had metal bumpers that you could hold on to,
Yeah.
and it would pull you down only when there was ice. So
Yeah.
skitching, I haven't heard that term in 30 years.
There you go.
And you
We
got
got skitching.
Minneapolis.
It's
doing that.
I don't even know where we were with that, but like, yeah, it's like we want scarcity. We want less advertising. It's just natural law of economics. If you want less of something, it's worth more. If diamonds were free, no one would have diamonds on their fingers. So the economics of advertising have to change. AI will allow us to do much better targeting. Privacy and blockchain will allow the individual to be secure and to handshake out into the world in a private and secure way. And advertisers will be able to deliver highly targeted advertising to the people who matter. And it's going to cost the same as it was before. You're just going to 100% get rid of media waste, and you're only going to spend money against the people that matter. And that means that there's going to be less clutter in the world. People are going to be more highly valued. You're going to have higher conversion rates, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I appreciate Andrew for coming on the show. For everyone listening, we started doing something a little different. A lot of you know that we created an 8-system framework called the Agency Playbook. And the first 3 systems are so foundational, no matter if you're an agency starting out or an agency that's been doing it for 20 years. If you go to swenk.com, SWENK.com, we're giving you access to the first 3 systems because they're so foundational. We want to give that to you for free to show you how to create the perfect offer, to get your team on board, to show how you can position your agency where you're not looking like everyone else. So make sure you guys go to swank.com. It's totally free. And until next time, have a swank day.